My name is Kristen Derr. I'm 31 years old. I'm from Asheville, Ohio. I'm originally from Loudonville, Ohio, which is far down in the country, Amish country, all that good stuff. I moved up here when I was 4 years old. I am biologically an only child, but I had a stepbrother through my stepfather, which my mom married. My father committed suicide prior to me being born. So I never knew my real father, which is something that kind of stayed with me for a long time when I was a kid, and it's something I use as an excuse to go get high over also. I played sports. I was great. I excelled in my academics. I was a straight A student. Played softball, volleyball, tennis, all that good stuff. I went to Harbor High School and then Lakeside. I was one of the last classes of Harbor High School before they tore it down. My childhood was a bit of a rough one. Through junior high, it started to get bad when my grandfather got sick. He was, prior to me not having a dad, he was my daddy. I grew up, I followed him everywhere. I used to chase cows in the cow pasture and bulls and all that stuff, but then we moved to Asheville County and I was close to 5, and we moved to this very small trailer park that from 120 acres of land to run around on to this, so it was a bit of a culture shock. I can look back and say it's where I got my first resentment, was having to leave. I missed it so much. So I didn't know how to react, so that's why I did. I threw myself in school. I threw myself into sports and anything else. My home life wasn't the greatest. There was a lot of drinking, there was a lot of fighting. You could feel the tension when you're in my house. You could just feel the animosity my parents had towards each other. He was my stepfather, but he's my dad to me, you know, no matter what. He had a son, Tommy, that was a few years older than me. He couldn't stand me because I was the annoying little sister. We recently just lost him about 1.5 years ago. He passed away, he committed suicide, and it was probably one of the hardest things I've had to deal with in my sobriety, but I stayed sober because nothing's gonna take that from me. The first time I ever drank or did anything was about 10 years old. I was with my friends. It was kind of the peer pressure thing, you know, hanging with your friends, wanting to fit in. I used to be real pudgy. I had a speech impediment. I came from the country and we were poor, so I was picked on a lot. And my last name's Derr, so that's like open season for anybody. I don't care if you're a kid or you're an adult, you're gonna laugh over it. I do. But it was warm peach schnapps at their mom's house, and it was the nastiest stuff I ever had in my entire life. But all of a sudden I fit in. And I wasn't so shy anymore, and I was bubbly and I was giddy, and I felt like my true self. I didn't touch anything else for a few years, and then after my grandfather got sick and he died after 13, it was a free-for-all. My mom and dad broke up, got divorced, and my mom, God bless her heart, dealt with her own demons, but her demons were drinking in the back of the trailer while I was a 13-year-old girl that had no coping skills, had nothing. I didn't know how to deal with life. I was never taught how to deal with life because my mom wasn't either, you know, so there was that cycle. I am also dual diagnosis. I have borderline personality disorder, major depressive disorder, and post-traumatic stress disorder, and anxiety disorder. I have so many disorders in there. But I work on them today. You know, I see a counselor, I see a psych, I'm medicated. I had to with my recovery. I had to fix both for me because I can't just do one or the other. My PTSD comes from the night I seen my grandfather pass away. He was having flashbacks. He thought the devil was after him, and being 13 years old watching this, it was really hard. It traumatized me. I'm also a recovering cutter. Coming up, it'll be 3 years from cutting. And I don't know if I said my sobriety date, but it's March 10th, 2015. After my grandfather passed away, it was really bad. My mom let me have older guys stay over. There was pot, there was pills, I did anything. I didn't care. I truly didn't care. And prior to that, I had a faith in God. I went to church, I was in youth group. At about 10 years old, I was molested by that youth group leader. Me and God kind of had issues there. And then once my grandpa died, pardon me for saying it, but it was middle finger to the air. You know, my dad left, my grandpa's dead, my mom's doing whatever she needs to do to cope. What do I do? So the first time I went back down to my grandparents' house for spring break after my grandfather had passed, I remember I got into a fight with my grandmother, and I went in the bathroom, and that's when I grabbed a razor blade and I cut myself for the first time. I never seen it, nobody taught me it, but it was an addiction too. It was the same thing to stop the pain, just like all the pills, just like the alcohol, just like everything, just to stop the pain. I started doing really bad in school. I hardly ever went. My mom let me have people at the house all the time. I did whatever was in front of me without even thinking twice. By 17, I had done everything but heroin and a few other drugs. I was a full-blown cocaine addict my senior year of high school. I did a meth binge. It didn't matter. My mom would be in the bars and do her thing because that was her way of coping, and I did what I did. There was no healthy coping skills. There was no way to deal with anything. I didn't know. I tried to get help many times. I tried to commit suicide at 17 years old because I wanted help. I reached out for help, but at that time there wasn't really a lot of facilities around to get the help that I needed. There wasn't really help out there, or I didn't know where to get it from. I told everybody I felt like I was going to commit suicide. They put me in some overnight suicide unit in Cleveland, which I thought was just ridiculous, because I'm like, no, I need help. I need a counselor. I need something. But that was their way of doing it, which they did try. Exactly a month later to the date, when I was supposed to go back to the Menor area to see a psych, I had attempted suicide. I woke up that next morning and I went, and I ended up getting placed in Laurelwood at 17. I've had multiple psychiatric visits because of that, because for me it is my addiction and my mental health go like this together. I got help and I was good for a few months. You know, I stopped doing all the drugs, I stopped doing everything, tried to get it together, tried to go back to school in my second senior year because I had to drop out, which bummed me out so much because my grandpa, God bless his heart and rest his soul, he always wanted to see me graduate. That was his big thing. Nobody in the family graduated, nobody in my family went to college, so I was like the golden child that was, you know, gonna do all this stuff, and then I ended up turning into the black sheep just like that. I dropped out again my second senior year. I was doing everything. That's when I started to incorporate Oxycontin and pills and cocaine and meth, and it didn't matter to me. I got a job at Crow's Nest. So I was a waitress, so I had money every night. My mom also works there, so at 18 I could drink at the bar, and it was horrible. I'd be outside vomiting because I drank. There was no limits for me. I never had limits. I just did. It was more. I went back to school my third senior year. I remember driving by and seeing everybody go there. I went to my health teacher. That was the only teacher. God bless Miss Penna. She's still a teacher to this day too. I went to her and I said, Miss Penna, I need help. I want to graduate. And she worked with the school, and I ended up getting my diploma, and I got to graduate almost 20 years old, but I graduated. And it was one of the best moments of my life. You know, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get things together. I'm gonna do things better, which without help, it's impossible. I met a guy in Youngstown. I was doing morphine. I was doing oxys, Percocet, Vicodin. It didn't matter. I was doing morphine suckers, which I'd never heard of before. A lot of that time frame is a blur to me. By 21, I moved to California and decided to go get pregnant with the guy I followed out there. And I had my little girl, but even after I had her, I was right back to the same thing. Nothing could stop me. I still didn't think I had a problem. I just was doing what I was doing. Nobody ever told me I had a problem. Nobody ever brought it up because they liked partying with me. They liked the money that I got. They liked all that kind of stuff. I didn't have true friends. I had junkie alcoholic friends that just wanted me to go down lower with them. At about 22, 23 is when I first stuck a needle in my arm. I swore to God that I would never do that, even though me and him had a broken relationship, because I loved the drugs and alcohol too much, and I loved the cutting too much. You put two of those things together, you put self-harm and a narcotic together, I was done for. I remember my little girl crying as I'm in the bathroom. Mommy, what are you doing? Mommy, what are you doing? After I'm screaming at her prior to this, and come out like, let's go to the park. Let's, you know, I'm mommy of the year because I got my fix. And I promised myself if I ever have kids, I wouldn't put my kids through that pain that I went through. And I was doing the same exact thing. So, her father I was with had two kids also, which I love. They're still in my life today. Kenzie's 15 and Mason's 13, and oh God, the teenage years scare me with those two. You know, and my daughter's 9 now, and I have a 2-year-old son, but I couldn't do it. So I thought, okay, I went to a place, I went to a psych unit, and I'm like, how do I get into rehab? How do I get help? Because I finally knew there was a problem. When I'm taking my daughter's birthday money and Christmas money, and can't wait till I get that next fix, because pills became too expensive. Pills shot up when they changed the Oxycontins into, I forget what they did to where you couldn't shoot it up. You could still shoot it up, but it was like a 45-minute process. Here's somebody nodding off of a $20 bag of heroin. I'm spending $100 on pills, and they're more high than I am. So obviously with my addiction, and as sick as I was, I want what they got. I want that. I didn't want somebody that had a good life. I wanted somebody that was getting, you know, high. So that's, you know, I was a full-blown heroin addict by 23 years old. Everything I promised myself I would never be. I just didn't care anymore. And I thought that was my lowest point, but it wasn't. I got into a detox unit in Neil Kennedy in Youngstown, Ohio, which I went there a few other times for my impatience. I thought I was gonna get out, do the Suboxone program. I'll be fine. I can do this. For me, I know a lot of people, Suboxone works. For me, I can't. I just can't. I use it as a crutch. I ended up doing good for a couple weeks. I was working with the US Census Bureau full-time. I was going to school for medical assisting, but I wasn't going to meetings. I didn't have a sponsor. I wasn't doing all those things that I do now, but I didn't really know back then because I was just kind of putting the foot in the water of AA, NA, what it was. So needless to say, I sold my Suboxone and ended up dope sick again. That's how it was. That's how it always was for me. I remember one of my counselors saying, 6 more months, you'll be back. I'm like, get out of here. When I walked out the door of Neil Kennedy, almost 6 months to the date, here I come walking back in with my head down. But I kept going, you know. I did an inpatient there. I did a partial inpatient at another place, but I left because I was too focused on my kid's father that was also using. I wasn't focusing on myself. I wasn't doing it for myself. I was doing it for him and for the family and because it was the right thing to do, and it wasn't truly my breaking point yet. I went back a few times to rehab and I kept trying, but every time I did it my way. I didn't follow the steps. I didn't get the sponsor. I did the meetings. I had no problem doing the meetings, but I thought A and NA, all these cliche things like one day at a time and meeting makers make it and life on life's terms, I thought, pardon my language, they were full of shit. Like, that's not for me. You guys are crazy. This is a cult. You guys know. Well, I'm glad to say I'm part of that cult today. But I did. I struggled for a few years and I kept trying. And by the end of it, I was shooting meth and synthetic cocaine and heroin, and it didn't matter. I was down. I was 100 pounds smaller than I am now. There was nothing to me, and I walked back into treatment again to Neil Kennedy, and none of my counselors except for one of them recognized me. Some people do time in prison, I do time in rehab. That's what I did. The last time I was in there was 4 years ago. I gave up custody of my daughter to my mom. I was never in trouble with Children's Services, but God knows I should have been. I was taking her to my meth cook's house to take showers because I had no hot water in my house. I was trying to microwave bowls of water next to the bathtub so I could take a hot bath, but still thinking, okay, I can't tell anybody. I can't. I'm too ashamed. But yet I'm not ashamed to do that. And finally, when my daughter seen my meth cook smoking a bulb with a torch, I'll never, to this day, she was 4 years old, I will never forget the look on her face because I kept her away from seeing all that. Even though I was the lowest junkie there could be and the worst mom, I didn't let her see people shooting up or stuff like that. I guess I had some morals still somewhere deep inside of me. But the look on her face, I'll never forget, but that still didn't keep me sober. My mom kicked me out of my home that she owns a house that I lived in, and I met some guy in rehab and moved out to Salem when I gave up custody of her, and within 3 weeks I was getting high again with him because I wasn't going to meetings. I wasn't doing what I was supposed to. It's this guy's gonna save me, you know, and for me a guy will make me relapse like that. That's my addiction also is meant. When I came back home, I had nothing. I had no car, I had no job, I had nothing. My mom let me live in the empty house that had boxes in it until my neighbors took me in. I remember I was lying to everybody telling them I was sober and I wasn't because I was trying to get my daughter back because I was still in my sick thinking I deserve her. It was Thanksgiving 4 years ago, and the guy I was with took everything, all the pipes, everything out of the house. Needless to say, he went back to Salem and sold all my grandfather's stuff that I had back there. Everything I had was gone. I was gone. There was nothing left of me. And I'm downstairs taking a shower in the main pipe in November, washing my hair in it, and then going down to see my family in Loudonville and sitting there like, what are you doing? So that's when my neighbors took me in, and slowly but surely I started community counseling. The gentleman worked there. They taught me structure. You know, they believed in me. And I was still going over to the house. I was still shooting meth. I was still shooting heroin, lying to everybody. But then I started going to Celebrate Recovery where I met my friend Tasha. I heard her speak years ago. I thought she was batshit crazy, you know, at an AA meeting, but I heard this thing, Celebrate Recovery. So I started going there. Lo and behold, the irony of what my life is, the first person that ever shot me up with heroin was there sober, and I met up with her, and she became my sponsor, and I started slowly getting it together. I was still lying to everybody about how long I had clean, but I was staying sober. I was told years ago that I could never have any more children. I'd accepted it in women's group. As I'm becoming closer to God during all this, I remember praying, okay, I'm gonna pray for God's will. I've never done this before. Okay, we'll try it out, and Sarah warned me, when you pray for God's will, you duck and you cover. 2 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant with my little boy, which the baby I was told I could never have again. And I'm like, okay, God, I see you. Like, that's the biggest statement you could ever make. But I was still not homeless, but I just still didn't have a car, I didn't have a phone, I didn't have anything. Slowly but surely, I got all that back. I started working steps. I stayed sober. My little boy tried coming out at 25 weeks and gave me a bit of a scare, and he kept trying to come out, but thank God he stayed until full term. By the time I gave birth to him, my mom had seen my progress and she gave me my home back. The woman from the church donated so much stuff for my son. I ended up buying a car, my first car. I was working, I was doing home health care, I was doing all these things. I was getting life back, but there was still something, I just don't know what it was, that was missing at that time, even though I was working with God. By the time I was a few months prior to getting my daughter back, my mental health, this is where my mental health comes in. I was off all my meds, obviously. When I had my son, I got postpartum depression. They put me on a medication and the doctor did not warn me of the side effects of what it would be like. I remember holding my son when he was 3 months old feeling high. At the same time, I was getting complacent. I was hanging out with an old friend that I knew from 4 years old that when I decided to relapse, I shot some dope, and I've never in my entire life, there's always okay, do some coke, pop some pills. I've never just gone straight back to the needle, and I did. My ex-boyfriend at the time, my son's father, which is now my fiance, and we're getting married in September, which is insane to me. He had our son for the night because we had just recently broken up too. So like I said, I will relapse over a guy real quick if I'm not in the right state of mind. I went out to the bar that night. I don't even remember driving home. I had my friend drive home after getting down the road, so I'm thinking I'm gonna kill somebody or I'm gonna kill myself. By the time I got home, I had bruises on my face from throwing up outside the window, from my head hanging out. It was like 30 some degrees outside. It was in March. I thought I'd be okay. That was my night of debauchery. I got it out of my system. I'm not going to tell anybody. 2 days later, that urge, I woke that monster up again because I can't take just one. I can never take just one. I called my friend up because he lived right down the road and he brought some heroin over and a needle. My son was asleep on the futon downstairs, and I remember shooting up. I remember sitting at the dining room table, and every time that I used to get high, I wanted to die because I was too scared to kill myself. And this time, and I've never overdosed, this time I felt myself. Literally, the table was drenched in sweat. I couldn't move. I was having a hard time breathing, and my friend left because he had to go home. I remember looking over at my son laying there, and I said, I can't do this anymore. And I crawled over on the floor. And I dropped down on the same floor that I prayed so many times before. I'm like, God, I don't want to die. For this once, I don't want to die. And I crawled up next to him and I held him. And I went out and I thought I was dead. I woke up the next morning. Dude, it was kind of blurry to me, but I woke up and I'm like, thank you, God. I go to community counseling. I ran into community counseling in my group. Thank God it was the day I had group. It was a Tuesday. I'll never forget it. I ran and I told everybody, I'm like, I messed up. I got high. I don't want to die. I can't do this. I went to celebrate recovery that night. I was a mess, bawling in front of everybody. I didn't care because I was not going to die. From that point on, I have worked my ass off. And it has been hard. I've lost my aunt, my uncle committed suicide, my brother committed suicide, my best friend that I met in rehab, and this is something I wanted to share too. My good friend Tasha took me when it happened. He was 31 years old, and what keeps me sober on my days is I look at his ashes. He left a family behind. I met him in rehab. He was one of my best friends and helped me through AA. I stayed sober through that. I have stayed sober through so much because there's no reason I don't want to die today. There's no reason at all to pick up. I work the steps, I help girls, I do the big book, I go to AA, I still sometimes pop in NA, I do CR every once in a great while. I have 2 sponsors today because that's just the better thing for me to have 2. I have a life today, I'm getting married, I have both of my children. I have a beautiful home, I'm going to college. I never thought, and that was my dream ever since I was little, was to go to college. I just got a call, which I'm gonna have to turn down because of life and opportunity. Somebody reached out to me to be a counselor assistant at Glen Bay today. Me, the piece of shit junkie that was a horrible mom that didn't, me, why me? But I see why me today. Because I do give back. Anytime I'm asked to speak, I speak. I don't care if I'm tired. I don't care if it's been a long day or if my kids are driving me nuts and I'm thinking of murdering them. I go and I speak because that's what I have to do. I have to give back. So many people in my life have been there and dedicated themselves to helping me. That's the only way I'm going to stay sober is if I give back. And I work the steps. I have to work the steps. I absolutely do because I'm a mess inside. I can stay sober, sure, but I'll be a dry drunk. It's not about just stopping doing drugs and stopping drinking. You have to change who you are. Who you are is the problem. My mind, my thinking is the problem. I have to dive into what hurts. It's gonna hurt like hell. But I need to face that. I can't run from my demons anymore. I need to find out what my demons are and try to fix that. I'm always going to be an addict and I'm always going to be an alcoholic, but I don't have to act on that today. I can be the person that I've always had inside of me. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Manners, morals, all that stuff that's instilled in me. I can be who I am today. For once in my life, a sense of self. I've never known who I was. Am I this person? Am I that person? I hung out with this clique, that clique. You know, I could be like a chameleon with anybody. And today I'm all that. That's just me. I get along with everybody. I try to be a better person and do right. And I fail daily, but I have that faith with God that I do. I say a third step prayer every day. Since my relapse, I told God every day I would make sure I stay in constant contact with him. There's not been a single day that I have not prayed to God or thanked God, because that was the one thing for me that was missing. It was a belief, it was a faith. I can work the steps all I want, but if I don't believe in anything, it's not going to get me anywhere. I can work with sponsors, but I have to have faith that things are going to be okay. Because if not, I'm going to be the same old person I used to be and find any excuse to get high. So for today, I have my kids, I have a home, I have great friends. I can be friends with guys today, and it's a good relationship. It's, you know, I have friends in AA that are men that I don't sleep with. I don't have to sleep with. I have women, I love women in the program. I used to hate girls, you know, the whole, oh, I hang out with guys because girls are this and that. No, I love the women in my life today. I have so much support from them. They've taught me how to be a lady. Dressing up, no, this is not me. I don't like dresses. I don't like doing the whole thing. I can do it fine, but I'd rather be in sweatpants, but I'm taught to show up, dress up, and do what you need to do. You know, I'm a different person because of AA today. I don't know, I'm getting married. I'm doing all these things I swore I'd never do, and I'm domesticated now, and that's crazy. I bake cookies and do laundry and clean the house, and I clean my house today. I don't leave this stuff sit and mold and just ignore it. I am constantly moving forward, and even if I take a step back, I still come back from it. So today life is good because I chose to have faith and stay sober.